When Donkey Kong Country was released in 1994, it helped to revolutionize the interpretations of Donkey Kong and to create the franchise of Donkey Kong Country, which would have further installments. However, from information now known, the soundtrack of the video game was later considered to be some of the most underrated ever composed due to the technological circumstances of the time. But the speculative scenario is this: what was the significance of Aquatic Ambience in Donkey Kong Country? When Donkey Kong Country was released, originally the Japanese branch of Nintendo didn't expect too much from the British company of Rare when Donkey Kong Country was being conceived of. Shigeru Miyamoto, the creator of Donkey Kong, thought aspects of the side-scrolling game were repetitive and didn't think American or European gamers of the time would have enough patience or even concentration to experience the repeated levels of the sort, or even replay some of the completed stages for collectibles. The budget for the video game was also somewhat less than usual for a project of the time, and this extended further naturally into the soundtrack of the game. The composer of the music for the video game, David Wise, conceived of the soundtrack on the rest of the music for the game as he did what he could with the technology of the time. The beats, sounds, and the tracks that he created were simple yet creative, even highly original. Some of his compositions were actually put together to form an experimental track, which would later become Aquatic Ambience. Also, the version that was later known took him roughly 5 weeks to create, but he later considered that particular piece to be his favorite and the most technologically advanced of the entire soundtrack for the video game. At the time, David Wise was a freelance musician hired by Rare to complete the musical soundtrack for the game, and didn't have much faith that his work would have remained intact for the final version of Donkey Kong Country. He assumed that some or even all of his work would have been removed and instead replaced with Japanese composed music due to the importance of the Donkey Kong franchise to Nintendo, but the leadership of the time decided to keep the British-made audio, sound effects, and music as how Rare, along with David Wise, originally intended. When the game was released, it was a pivotal success for Nintendo, and all critics about this particular success of Donkey Kong Country were silenced, and even Shigeru Miyamoto apologized to development at Rare for doubting the British company. Due to the complexity of the track at the time, it was considered one of the most influential of the mid-1990s for gaming technology of the era, and is now considered to be one of the greatest pieces of video game music ever composed.